started. Here we go. Just a second. Okay, good afternoon. Can everyone hear and see me fine? Alyssa, could you give me a shout?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, and everyone can see the slide fine?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. All right, so everyone's time is very valuable. I know it's a Saturday. I'll go ahead and jump right in. We are Advocacy Q+. We are a scientific research to action organization, and we stimulate equity through 4 core features. We have our ethnographic research program, which is a community level interaction with minority and marginalized groups in the forms of story listening, interviews, focus groups, and passive observations while interacting with communities. We also have our post-research expansion program known as PREP, and then we have our educational outreach program and our library program, which are secondary features to our scientific research focuses, where we will further utilize equity by bridging gaps between communities into better equitable access, such as education and job opportunities. I'd like to introduce our team before we jump right into the topic today of genomics being the future of equitable social justice. We have myself, Rebecca, as the founder, chair, and president. And then we have our wonderful vice president, Molly, who is vice chair as well as vice president. And then Alyssa Durham, our outstanding media director, who's here with us today. He kind of heard pop in and out of the audio so far. Oh, they also serve as treasurer. To get into genomics being the future of equitable social justice and what this truly means, it's important to understand what scientific research actually is. Scientific research is a method of asking questions about the world and life using observations, experiments, and analyses to produce empirical evidence around theories for the posed questions. Scientific research being a method means that there are protocols to how observations, experiments, and analyses are performed to ensure they are empirical. To jump into this idea of empirical and its relationship to scientific research and producing more equitable social justice, it's important to define what empirical data actually is. Empirical data is information collected through scientific protocols for performing observations, experiments, and analyses. Empirical data is based on real-world evidence and generated through methods that test ideas and produce answers. Empirical data often takes the form of quantitative data, which is very important to how Advocacy Q Plus looks to utilize scientific research and scientific publications to promote equity. Quantitative data is data that is maintained in numerical form and can be measured and expressed as data counts, percentages, and statistical measures. It is most often used to identify patterns, to test hypotheses, or to make predictions. Examples include the number of participants surveyed, the number of participants within an event or a survey score, or measurements of height, weight, and time as a few examples. Quantitative data is highly useful, especially within scientific research and scientific publications, through its function in statistical analysis. Statistical analysis is a way of turning raw information in the form of numbers into usable knowledge about the world around us. Statistics helps us take mathematical numbers and determine patterns, relationships, and trends within that raw information. This helps determine this helps determine if a new medicine is more effective than an old medicine. I've mentioned a few times that the reason Advocacy Q Plus is so interested in scientific research and its application to social justice is through the form of scientific publications. Scientific publications are generated from experimental protocol conduction, data generation, and then empirical analysis. These publications represent factual information and are not biased by opinions. This latter point of not being biased due to that scientific generation to the data within the publication is the caveat that Advocacy Q Plus truly wishes to utilize to stimulate better and more effective social justice. To understand the broader topic that we're here to talk about, genomics and its ability as a scientific field to further stimulate better social justice, we need to get into what biology, genetics, and DNA actually are. Biology is the study of living organisms such as animals, plants, and microorganisms. The field helps us determine how these organisms grow and survive and interact with each other and their environments. Biology helps us cure disease, protect the environment, and learn more about the natural world around us. Biology is greatly influenced by a field within itself known as genetics. Genetics helps us understand how we pass on information biologically from generation to generation. Genetics is the study of traits like height and eye color and how genes impact these traits. These genes are little blueprints, if you will, and tools for building and managing life as we know. This is all performed within this little powerhouse known as a cell. This is the little factory where these blueprints are utilized and life really starts to occur. Cells are tiny building blocks that make up all of life. They are little factories containing the blueprints and the ability to turn these blueprints into life. Cells form together to create systems that become our tissues and our organs that make up our bodies. Within that little cell, there is what is known as DNA. This is that blueprint I keep referring to. This is that material that we utilize to develop how the cell functions and life as we know it. DNA is the blueprint. DNA contains the information to grow, develop, and function. DNA is comprised of a few core biological and biochemical features, such as being composed of a sugar phosphate backbone, and then these four nucleotides seen here to the right, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. This construction between the sugar phosphate backbone and these four nucleosides helps control how the DNA packages itself. So how does DNA then make the components of life? First, the blueprint is copied for construction. Second, the blueprint is read and raw materials are used to execute the design within that little blueprint or copy of that blueprint specifically. Third, the components made from the blueprint go on to perform action or become incorporated into other machinery within the cell. This gives us an idea of what biology is, how these little cells that make up all of our tissues and organs function, the important information of DNA that contains that blueprint for how that cell manages, survives, and grows. So how then, as Advocacy Q Plus, are we going to use this idea of genetics and genomics to better assess and stimulate social justice? Our approach will be through using environmental impacts to DNA that are well-known, documented, and published upon within the scientific community to assess genomic stressors to minority communities. The environment and stressors from the environment can make the blueprint that is our DNA more or less accessible. But increased and decreased accessibility of these blueprints leads to imbalance, and then this contributes to health issues. Examples of how this increased and decreased accessibility can occur, especially through environmental influences, include but are not limited to chemicals, radiation, poor nutrition, as well as stress. So this gives us the idea that environmental impact to our DNA and our genetics is bad. This contributes to health issues. What's most important for Advocacy Q Plus's priorities and focus is that these health issues, when analyzed through demographic lenses, especially looking at minority communities, develop what are known as health disparities. These are relative differences in health outcomes and healthcare access that occur between different groups of people at different exacerbated rates between the groups being analyzed. Health disparities are contributed to by social, economic, and environmental factors. I have pieced together this idea that health disparities are looking at specific health issues from a minority-focused and equity-focused lens. So it's important to better understand this idea of piecing together health disparities and minority community impacts. Some communities may have higher rates of diabetes, heart disease, or other underlying health conditions that are exacerbated by these health disparities. These occur due to a lack of access to healthy food, safe housing, quality health care, or other systemic barriers that vary between community to community. To give an idea of what these health disparities and minority impacts look like, specifically in South Carolina, where Advocacy Q Plus is launching, 6 out of 10 individuals have a chronic disease. This is within minority population comparisons, and 4 out of 10 have more than one chronic disease. 44% of Black and African American communities suffer from obesity. South Carolina has the highest rate of diabetes in the country. 1 in 4 Black and African American individuals compared to their white counterparts. I apologize, let me restate that statistic. South Carolina has the highest rate of diabetes in the country, with 1 in 4 Black and African American individuals having diabetes compared to their white counterparts. and a 2.4 times higher death rate from diabetes. This all is subsequently occurrent from access to healthcare and expansion of Medicare as large contributing factors. The environment does have an impact to these South Carolina health disparities. This is that lens, once again, to iterate that Advocacy Q Plus wishes to utilize to approach social justice. In South Carolina, well-documented environmental impacts to health disparities include air and water quality that are contributing to respiratory issues, cardiovascular issues, and other chronic diseases. This impacts minority communities at a much higher rate. We also see within South Carolina what are known as food deserts. This is where access to fresh and nutritious food are limited. This contributes to diabetes and hypertension in low-income communities. We also see in our state social vulnerability, which combines risk from environment, socioeconomic status, and healthcare access around, I apologize. Social vulnerabilities are combined risks of environment, socioeconomic status, and healthcare access. Around half of South Carolina counties are defined as having high social vulnerability. These individuals face severe impact from climate change in particular. So how can these environmental stressors and their impact to DNA be monitored? There are actually many ways in which the environment and its impact to DNA can be monitored. Advocacy Q Plus will use biomarker assessments as well, or will use biomarker assessments. Biomarkers are measurable indicators of biological effects from environmental stressor exposures. So I've up to this point defined biology, genetics, DNA, how environment can impact the accessibility or inaccessibility of these blueprints, how this contributes to health disparities, and how Advocacy Q Plus seeks to analyze these biomarkers, or that we do wish to analyze biomarkers to stimulate social justice. So we need to define what social justice is. Social justice is an ideal for creating a fair society based on equity through addressing systemic issues. Social justice is primarily focused on education, employment, healthcare, and legal protections. Social justice promotes dignity and well-being for all individuals. This is that raw component that Advocacy Q Plus wishes to spread throughout the state, this dignity and well-being for all. I've mentioned previously within the presentation, Advocacy Q Plus wishes to use genomics within the form of scientific publications as a way to stimulate more equitable social justice. The reason this is so important is because scientific publication and subsequent action reports that we can pull together from these publications do not represent lobbying behaviors to the IRS, which is highly critical for how Advocacy Q Plus can function and the success we can achieve. As well, empirically developed action reports will be far more well received and likely to be carried out by state agencies such as FEMA and DHP. This gives rise to the entire concept of what we've been here to discuss today, and that is genomics is the future of equitable social justice. This is the ability to assess biomarkers of environmental stressors to health disparities and then turn those into empirical scientific publications representing a novel way forward for social justice. Advocacy Q Plus in particular will use this approach of biomarker assessment and empirical scientific publication to generate action reports to state agencies, as I've mentioned. This will allow us to mitigate how these state agencies are responding and progressing within their own well-documented and stated health initiatives that can be found on all their state agency websites. Our action reports being developed through rigorous scientific methods represent a way to stimulate equitable change that's not biased by opinion, which is where a lot of equitable progress and social justice can fail, is this ability to look at things as just opinions rather than quantitative provable facts. It's important to note that our use of biomarker assessment and the scientific publications and protocols we will develop will all be based on previously known findings to help us fuel our assessments. Advocacy Q Plus will be using well-established scientific discoveries that show environmental stressor impact to DNA in a way that contributes to current health disparities. At Advocacy Q Plus, we will use these known biomarkers to assess real-time impacts to minority communities and use these assessments to create and promote a healthier South Carolina. This allows us to establish a novel methodology. In particular, we are seeking to write a R01 grant to the National Institute on Environmental Health Sciences to publish and establish this novel methodology of using biomarker assessments and action report development to establish and stimulate equitable changes through genomic assessments. We will study specific genes that have known findings for being altered by the environment and contribute to higher rates of gastrointestinal cancers. We have identified a gene that does do exactly this. As well, for why this is important, looking at some of those South Carolina health disparities that are ongoing that we've already discussed, another one of these is within gastrointestinal cancers. And these are known to impact Black and African American communities with a 20% higher rate and an even higher death rate than their white counterparts. This is an important problem that is faced by these communities that deserves attention and resolution. These are avoidable burdens to families, communities, and the healthcare system at whole. And this is what Advocacy Q Plus truly seeks to resolve with the development of this novel methodology. As well, we will then take this methodology in the year of 2025 and fund for 2 different housing projects that we have planned. We will use this methodology of biomarker assessment and action report development to fuel 2 specific rural housing development grants that we have identified. One of these rural housing grants will be focused on single mothers of color and will result in the development of a tiny home village within local rural areas. This will allow us to not only provide free housing to these individuals who are having issues with housing disparities, but also allow us to place an educational center inside each of these tiny home villages so that these mothers can come together to help homeschool their children together. As well, Advocacy Q Plus will be able to launch our educational outreach programs from within this educational center, allowing us to provide better opportunities and access into education, employment, and better standards of living for both the mothers and the children involved. We will then use this exact same project idea based within the trans community as well. This wraps up Advocacy Q Plus, how we are going to use genomics to stimulate more equitable social justice. If If you could please, I would love it if you would give us a follow. We have our Facebook page QR code linked up here, as well as a link down at the bottom. We also have the QR code for our website. Please follow us and sign up for our newsletter. Signing up for our newsletter especially goes a long way if you're interested in hearing more from us and attending future events. As well, it really helps us establish our footprint and get off the ground in terms of preliminary data generation for the impact of Advocacy Q+ within local communities. I would like to take a second before we move into questions to make a few acknowledgments. I'd like to acknowledge Greenwood County Library Systems and thank them for the event space for today. It was highly instrumental in helping us get off the ground. We greatly appreciate the library they have here as well. If you are here in person, you should definitely consider signing up for a library card on your way out. It helps the library sustain, and the library staff here are phenomenal and highly resourceful. I would like to thank for our resources a nonprofit organization known as Instrumental, who has been critical in my learning as president and founder in terms of grant seeking and grant writing. I attend 2 to 3 workshops and seminars offered for free by Instrumental a week. So they are highly instrumental, pun intended, for what I do. I'd like to thank my early partnerships that we have forming already. One has been offered to us through the ACLU of South Carolina with the South Carolina Housing Justice Network. They have shared a lot of preliminary data with us that we're going through currently, and we're working on partnerships to analyze this data, improve the data, and use this to launch more of our housing projects. I'd also like to thank all of my advertisers over here to the right, all of you allowing us to place out our posters, leave out business cards, and all of your helpful insights as I look for community spaces to launch events has been very, very helpful. Thank each and every one of you. Oh, and a quick thought, shout out and thank you to my team. Y'all have been amazing in supporting me and helped me getting everything off the ground. So with that, I'd like to throw a QR code up on the screen that will link to a post-seminar survey. I highly urge everyone here to take the survey. It will help us build better educational seminars in the future. And with that, I'd like to open the floor and take any questions. I see there's been a good bit going on in the chat, so I will check that now. Alyssa, you were fantastic. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, well, do you have any? Okay, excellent. If anyone has not made a shout out in the chat real quick, please do so that we can use it just to capture full attendance. And thank you all so much for being here. Please, please consider our survey and newsletter. All your early support goes a long way. Thank you. And everyone can now run away once they said hello. Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
That was good.
Thank you. Okay.
Also, what's the specific things that you do for Outback? Is that for the R1 there you're going to apply for with the manage?
Yes, so that's a fantastic question. If anyone's still here and didn't hear that question, it was in regards to an R01 specific aims that Advocacy Q+ has written, and whether this was in regards to the organization that I had mentioned. The complicated answer is that R01 was originally written for an organization called the National Institute on Minority Health Disparities, and slightly longer name that for some reason I'm forgetting at the moment. I did meet with their program director, Dr. Crystal Barksdale. The presentation and informational mentoring session went well, but that R01 didn't fit for their specific program because they required us to have previously published data that we would be writing the aims on, and we are just getting off the ground, so we did not. She is who connected me to the program director in the National Institute on Environmental Sciences, though. So it did go well. It did result in things still moving on, and we're hoping to have good ground within that. Thank you, Abigail. Bye. Thank you, David. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. To everyone on Zoom land, thank you so much for being here, and I hope y'all have a good day.